I really appreciate it. This is actually a very fun topic for me. This is something very close to my heart, as it was a topic that I researched many years ago. And researching it again only made it, it's so much, it's a lot of fun to look back into topics that I've seen in the past. So tonight, we are going to discuss something that we are all familiar with by words, but not necessarily in concept. Right now, we're all in the middle of Sefiras Ha'omer. Hopefully, everybody is doing well on sticking with the count. I know it's difficult because there's no minyanim, so it's just like, you have to remember to count when you especially with the Seder, the second Seder, and but we're all in the Sefiras Ha'omer, and we're counting. Literally, the translation of the words is Sefiras Ha'omer, the counting of the Omer. What is the Omer? Now, that is obviously a question I'm sure that many, many people have thought of. So, whenever we're trying to figure out what something is, we always go back to the source. The source is the Torah. So the Torah says in Parshas Emor, where a lot of the Yamim Tovim come up and are discussed. And this time, the Torah says, Moshe Hashem says to Moshe, saying, speak to the Jews and say to them, when you come to the land that I'm going to give to you, and you harvest the harvest, omer, and you bring an omer is a quantity, the beginning of your harvest to the Kohen. So now we have a little bit more of a concept here. So hard to know that means, from terminology, always be careful. Different words can be those are three examples. Each one is referring to we know that means grains. So you're which is bring something into HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's altar and context. Really, we're also going to talk about the grain. Also, until you be that's context. Before this time for typically again, you have to the question is, though, are we able to sort it out? Right now is such a we do. Why is it more? So also means core doesn't just mean to remember, but it also means to mention this amazing charity that's without food. That's not the point. Right? As that is what he mentions. Is talking about the prohibition of this and this to bring the sacrifice on this why? So that we shouldn't mix two happy events. What does he mean? Because the first day, that's the Seder. That's the first day of Pesach. That we have to focus on the fact that we were taken out of Mitzrayim. We were brought out of slavery, all aspects of that, whether that's the physical slavery, the spiritual slavery, like the Rambam talks about, right? That is what we need to focus on the first day. To me, this tells me that something that me and my generation, younger than me for sure, have major issues with something called multitasking. People love multitasking. You tell your students, listen, you got to pay attention. You can't just be texting on the phone when I'm talking to you in class. Well, come on. What do you mean? I can multitask. So what does multitask mean? Multitasking means that I'm doing multiple things without giving 100% focus on either. That's what that means. So here, the chinuch is explaining that why do we specifically have it on another day? Is that we can give 100% focus on both ideas because they're extremely important. And that is hopefully what we can gain, is that when we have these things and we focus on these things, and again, for me, this was like such an opportunity that we have. Again, we would never have asked for such a situation of coronavirus in the world. It's wild. Nobody would have thought this would happen ever. But when we do have what was given to us by Hashem, we don't have a choice. Hashem gave it to us. So here we have such an opportunity to be able to refocus. Like for myself, there are major benefits of davening alone, is because you can spend as much time as you want on whatever parts of davening that you want. Think about it, right? Or if you have difficulty following in classes in the text, so pick up a book, pick up a sefer, pick up a chumash with English. Spend as much time as you want until you get it. Nothing is holding you back, right? It's an amazing opportunity. So here too, we have an opportunity to refocus ourselves, to be able to work that power of concentration on the things that are important. And this is what the idea of having it on the second day is, and not on the first day. Okay, so in summary, right, some of the ideas that we've spoken about just of the hashkafa, and then we'll get to more of the halacha. I don't know that we'll get through all of the halacha today. If we don't, so then we'll continue it the next time. So we have like this. We now have a new crop that is ready to be harvested. Now the Omer was coming from barley, just practically. So we're also going to talk about that in a different class. But the Omer offering came from barley. And we were bringing the first of the grains to the Beis Hamikdash to say to Hashem, listen, Hashem, I recognize that you have done to us a tremendous good, that without it, literally, we'd be dead. You every single year and consistently allow for the grains to be growing, and we have this new grain. Thank you so much. And we want to give you some and sort of do a bracha where we're saying to Hashem, thank you, before we benefit from it. And this is really connected to what we do every single day when we make a blessing on all of the various different things, whether it's eating food or whether it's the brachos on mitzvos and whether it's the brachos for good things happening to us, all the different brachos, it's the same idea. And we want to, with this, and when we really internalize it and do these things, then it really changes us to allow our receptor, our reception, our antennas to work properly, to be able to pick up on all of the good that Hashem is really sending our way in so many different ways. I mean, just, sorry, as a caveat in the point, but just one thing is like this, the coronavirus just awakens in my mind how amazing of a miracle it is that we're always, most of us are healthy most of the time. That's an amazing miracle. Just like that, the whole world flipped over because a small microscopic virus, took over and literally made so many people sick. It's an amazing thing that Baruch Hashem, the normal is that people are normally healthy. That's an amazing miracle. Either way, so where we have to be able to focus this idea that we allow ourselves to be ready to accept all of the good from Hashem and recognize that it's from Hashem, and be able to move forward and have complete focus on that, to be able to move forward and make ourselves better people. Okay, so that's some of the machshava, the outlook on what the Korban Omer is. Now, as I mentioned before, the end of the Sukham really discusses about how the new grains are not really, you're not able to benefit from them until you bring this Omer. So the colloquial term for this issue is called Yasha. those who are stringent about these halachas today, we'll get into a little bit about like what the practicals of it are. But for those who are stringent on these halachas today, so they're called people who are makpid an Yasha. That's the colloquial term. So that means that they are stringent to be eating only the grains that were planted in the ground prior to Pesach. Okay, so here we go. So what exactly does that mean? So the Gemara says, it's a Mishnah in Menachos. It says, so you have 5 different grains, and 5 primary grains. So chitim is wheat, saorim is barley, right? Kusmin is spelt. Shibolos we'll discuss in a second, and shifon is rye. So these are the 5 primary grains. These are all required to take challah, meaning if you would make yourself a dough to bake bread, then you would have to take off a certain amount. If it would be a certain quantity, and you would have to give that to the Kohen. So that's challah. And here's the important thing for us. And it is prohibited with the new grains prior to Pesach. And it's prohibited to harvest it prior to the bringing of the Omer offering. If there was a rooting, meaning it was planted and it rooted in the ground prior to the Omer, Ha'omer matiro. So then the Korban Ha'omer permits it to be eaten, and if not, asur nad shiavo Ha'omer haba. Then it will be prohibited until the next Korban Ha'omer, meaning the next year, Korban Pesach, by the Pesach. Okay, so now let's just talk a second about what the 5 grains are. So 4 of them, I don't know that there's any debate about. All right, there's wheat, barley, spelt, and rye. Those are your 4 grains, right? The commonality to all of them is they all have gluten, every single one of them. Now, the one that is typically shibolas shul, typically is translated as oats. There is a major machlokas about whether it is oats or not. The major opinion behind saying that it is not oats is really, I believe he's in Bar Ilan. Professor of Bar Ilan is Professor Felix. He held that it was not one of the 5 grains, shibolas shul, and he says that shibolas shul is really double-road barley. Now, if you look at the different grains, you just see the pictures. They look so vastly different from each other. And besides, the major difference is that oats, especially for people who are gluten-free or have celiac, know that pure oats have no gluten, which scientifically makes it a little bit complicated to understand how it would ferment. It would rise. It would turn into chametz. It would rise. However, I looked up that Rabbi Frati, a major posek in Eretz Yisrael, especially having to do with things having to do with mitzvot that are connected with the land, which this is one of them. So then he says that there was experiments done in that show that oats do become chametz, and therefore the real source to say that shibolas shul is oats is really Rashi. So this is a very, very old opinion. You're talking about Rashi lived in the 1st century. So you're talking about 1,000 years that we're holding that oats, shibolas shul are oats, and that now the generally accepted opinion is that it is oats. Now, if it wouldn't be oats, this would have drastic halachic ramifications for people who, again, who have celiac issues and they have to stay away from gluten. So then they would kind of, I don't know what they would do on Pesach because they wouldn't be able to eat the oat. So this would like flip the entire world on its head. Most people that most people hold, everybody that I've really spoken to holds that oats is part of the 5 major species, and that's that. So now the question is so again, we're talking about the new grain. So the new grain. Okay, so the new grain is what's being permitted here when we have the Korban Ha'omer. So the question is, what is new? So as the Mishnah said, that it depends on when it was rooted in the ground. Okay, so if it was rooted in the ground before Pesach, so then Pesach works to permit it. If it wasn't rooted in the ground before Pesach, then Pesach does not work to permit it. Now, a question that I thought of that I don't know the answer. I think it does permit it, but if, let's say, for example, it was in the ground before Pesach, but somebody harvested it before Pesach, so now it was sitting on the shelf. I'm pretty sure that that also worked, that the korban also works on that, but just intellectual honesty, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure. So, okay, so the Shulchan Aruch rules that Tavua Shel Yeshisha Kodem Lates Zayin B'Nisan, grain that was not rooted in the ground prior to the 16th of Nisan, practically, right? That's for us in Chutz La'aretz, outside of Eretz Yisrael, that's the second day of Pesach. And for people in Eretz Yisrael, that's obviously the first day of Chol HaMoed. So then it's going to be prohibited until the next year. Now, how will we know whether something is halachically considered rooted in the ground? Right? Meaning the person put the seed in the ground at some date, covered it with dirt, and you don't see a thing. How do I know? Now, obviously, if it starts growing out of the ground and it's, seriously a grown grain, so then there's no question. Obviously, it was rooted because it wouldn't have grown if it wasn't rooted, especially because the roots are how you get the nutrients. But okay, given that that's not the case, so how do we know? So there's a debate. There's a machlokas whether it needs to be 3 days or 2 weeks. It seems like a lot of opinions hold that it has to be 2 weeks. I'm not sure how we hold on that practically, because I think a lot of the question practically it's a moot point, as we'll see. We'll see either later today or, we should see it today. Okay, so we'll see that it's kind of a moot point. So what we know is that the grain needs to be rooted before Pesach for this korban to permit the new grains. So obviously, it's really important for any Rav who's going to be answering questions about this, needs to also be a little bit of a botanist. You got to know, when is the wheat planted? Right? How many thought that, if Rabbi Fish would be asking this question, he's got to go out to the fields and find out, like, when is the wheat planted? So here, we have Google today, so thank God that makes it a little easier. So my information here comes from a Home Guides. I found it on an article. I tried to find, because there's an organization that helps people be stringent in these laws. They apparently have information from the USDA. I tried to find it myself, but I didn't understand exactly what I was finding. So I tried to contact them. They did not get back to me, but the USDA keeps very careful tabs on basically the entire food line. And they know when things are planted, how much, when it's harvested, all that type of stuff very clearly. So today, if you have the right connections, you can find out a lot of information. Okay, so basically you find out that there's really 2 types of wheat. One type of wheat is called winter wheat, and one is spring or summer wheat, whatever you want to call it. There is a third type of wheat. They call it durum wheat, but for the most part, halachically, it doesn't really make a difference, because the question, as we've seen, is a question of when it's planted. Okay, so we have 2 types of wheat. So one wheat is called winter wheat. So winter wheat, here I'll read to you what it says. It says, winter wheat is used to bake bread and rolls because of its good milling and making properties. And even a home gardener can produce enough to make a few batches of baked goods. It says here, it is planted in the fall, usually between October and December, right? So that tells us right away, that is way after Pesach, right? We're not even close. And grows over the winter to be harvested in the spring or early summer, right? So there's no question. This was in the ground before Pesach without question. And by the time Pesach came along, it was either still in the ground or it might have just been harvested. But again, winter wheat seemingly would not be a problem. Then it continues, spring wheat. Another popular wheat in the American diet and growing in American fields is spring wheat, the green shoots of which look lovely spaced in clumps among late spring and early summer flowers. Spring wheat is usually planted, here we go, between March and May, right? So March, that's like right around Pesach time. May, as we see today, after Pesach. So, and should be harvested or simply dug up between July and September, way before Pesach, right? So this grain is going to be a big problem if about the Korban Omer, because again, it's going to be months until Pesach. So it seems, again, as from this information, winter wheat, no problem. It's planted in the middle October time, right? You're not going to be. It's going to be planted in the ground before Pesach, no issues. And then Pesach time comes around, comes the Korban Omer, no issue. However, spring wheat or summer wheat, whatever you want to call it, that's going to be quite problematic. Now, just to give you an idea, anybody who has issues with celiac or gluten intolerance, or they have a diet of gluten-free, they know that there are many, many, many types of foods that have gluten that you would not think would have gluten. Now, obviously, there are some obvious ones. There's bread, beer, hard alcohol, barley for cholent, right? Those are pretty well known. Or cereals, a lot of them have wheat in it, right? But you wouldn't necessarily think of salad dressing having wheat, right? So certain salad dressings have wheat, or teriyaki sauce, or soy sauce, right? Both of those have something of the 5 grains in it, and for somebody who would be stringent on these things, it's you have to be very careful on what you're going to get. Now, again, it's similar in a sense to gluten issues, but except that sometimes it's totally fine. Unlike for people who have gluten intolerance, then obviously they can't have it anytime. Okay, so that's just some of the practicals. So we have, again, summary. In order for the wheat that we're talking about here, in order for the korban to work, to make it permitted, has to have been rooted in the ground before Pesach. If it isn't rooted in the ground, then you have to wait till the next year. Now, today, where we have a double growing cycle, so we have the winter wheat and the spring wheat. The winter wheat, not a problem, because the winter wheat will have been planted way before Pesach and towards the winter. Then it grows until about Pesach time or through the summer. However, the spring wheat is planted at or after Pesach, and many times after Pesach, most of the time, and it will be harvested in the middle of the summer. So it's going to end up being a problem for the kosher consumer who is stringent about this. Now, up till now, we have only heard of one way of making this grain permitted, and that is the Omer. Unless I missed the news, the Beis Hamikdash, sadly, I hope I missed this news, that the Beis Hamikdash is not there. We're not bringing korbanos. How does this grain become okay? How does this grain become okay? So, as we mentioned, the Sukham already have this very odd, it sounds like almost a contradiction in what it says, right? As we said before, the pasuk says that the new grains, lo soklat etzem hayom hazeh, you can't eat it until that day. Well, so then if you would stop there, that sounds like once that day comes, it's done, it's good. And it said, achaviechem is korban alokechem. Wait a second, who needs the korban? You just said until today. So why do I need the korban? So it's a good question, because the Gemara asks the question. The Gemara says, it's like this. Okay. Rav Shmuel Damri Tarvayu Bizman Shabeis Hamikdash Kayam. Rav and Shmuel say as follows: when the Beis Hamikdash is around, Omer Matir, the korban permits the new grains. Bizman she'ein Beis Hamikdash Kayam. When the Beis Hamikdash is not around, He'ir Mizrach Mutter. Once the sun comes up, the sun enlightens the eastern sky, then the grain is mutter. My timer, what's the reason? How do they know this? Trey kroy ksiv, because there's two psukim. Ksiv ad haviachem. It says in the pasuk, until you bring it. Uksiv ad etzem hayom hazeh. And it also writes until that very day. So which is it? Is it the bringing of the offering, or is it the day itself? Ha-ketzad. So how does this work out? Kahn b'zman shebeis hamikdash kayam, Kahn b'zman she'ein beis hamikdash kayam. That it depends. Is the Beis Hamikdash around or not? If the Beis Hamikdash is around, then you got to bring the offering. If the Beis Hamikdash isn't around, so then you are able to eat it immediately with the day. Now, practically, because of different issues, the Shulchan Aruch rules, and this is based on the Gemara, is that it's prohibited. Right, so that's when the Beis Hamikdash is around. That it's prohibited to eat the new grains from the 5 primary grains until the Omer is brought, which is on the 16th of Nisan. That's the second day. He quotes the pasuk. And what about today? The Leiga Omer, we don't have this korban. Also called Niyom Tezayin. It is prohibited all of the second day of Pesach. And let's say somebody lives outside of Eretz Yisrael. She'osin beis yamim, we have 2 days of Yantif. Aser kol yom yudzayin ad chilas leil yudches. It is prohibited all of the third day, right? Because Tes Vav, 15th is the first day of Pesach. Tes Zayin, 16 is the second day of Pesach. Yud Zayin is the first day of Chol Moed. So that's totally prohibited until the beginning of the next date, which in halacha is that night. So that night. So, okay, so that's basically where. Okay, this is a perfect place. I hope. So far, just to summarize, we have that the new grains are problematic until after the bringing of the sacrifice, or today where we don't have the sacrifice, you have to wait to a certain day. Right, in Chutz La'aretz, we have to wait until the evening after the first day of Chol Moed. So by the second day of Chol Moed, everything's fine. So that's basically a very basic introduction to the Korban Omer and some of the halachos. Hopefully, we will continue this introduction because obviously, I am sure many of you are wondering, Rabbi Kahn, I've never heard of this in my entire life. Like, what planet are you on that you have to worry about what, like, I just bought bread. It's got no you on it. It's good, right? Like, that's fine. Yeah, of course. You guys are all asking the right questions. And hopefully next week, same time, that we will be able to continue this discussion to really give more background about how exactly it happened that most Jews are not worried about this. Not worried about this at all. Does anybody have, Rabbi Feigenbaum, I think you can unmute anybody if they have questions. I don't know if anybody had any questions or if something needs to be clarified. I have no problem staying on a few minutes for clarifications. Anybody? Rabbi Feigenbaum? Rabbi Feigenbaum?
You hear me?
Yeah, no, I can hear you. Haha.
Okay, you're done, or you want to take questions and answers?
Yeah, I'll take